The moment I walked into that ballroom, I heard her say it. Sloane Whitmore, my brother's perfect fiancé, leaning toward her bridesmaids with champagne in her manicured hand, her whisper loud enough to carry across the room. "Oh, great, the broke farm girl is here." Her friends giggled like a pack of hyenas in designer dresses. Sloane didn't even bother looking at me when she said it. I was that insignificant to her, just some embarrassment who crawled out of a small town to ruin the aesthetic of her perfect engagement party. What Sloane didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I signed the deed to this hotel 3 years ago. The Monarch Hotel. Every chandelier above her head, every piece of silverware she was eating with, every square inch of Italian marble beneath her overpriced heels. All mine. My name is Rachel Montgomery. I'm 29 years old. And by the end of tonight, that whisper was going to cost Sloane everything she ever wanted. Because the broke farm girl was about to teach her a very expensive lesson about underestimating people. I grew up in Millbrook, Oregon, a town so small our only traffic jam was when Old Man Henderson's cows escaped and blocked Main Street for 3 hours. I left home when I was 18, not because I hated where I came from, but because my family made it crystal clear there wasn't room for me there. See, I have an older brother, Ethan, the golden child, the son who could do no wrong. Everything I did was measured against him, and I always came up short. If I got an A, Ethan had gotten an A+. If I made the volleyball team, Ethan had been team captain. My mother, Caroline, had a special way of looking at me that made me feel like a rough draft, while Ethan was the finished masterpiece. So I left. I packed one suitcase, took a bus to Portland, and started over with $200 and a stubborn refusal to fail. Everyone back home thought I was struggling. They pictured me in some tiny apartment eating ramen, which was true for the first 2 years. But what they didn't know was that I took a job cleaning rooms at a boutique hotel, and that job changed everything. I learned, I watched, I studied, I worked my way from housekeeping to front desk to assistant manager to manager. I saved every penny, invested carefully, made smart choices, took risks when they felt right. By 26, I owned my first property. By 28, I had 3. Now at 29, I run Montgomery Hospitality, a company that owns 5 boutique hotels across the Pacific Northwest. The Monarch is my flagship, my pride and joy. But here's the thing about building something from nothing. You learn to stay quiet. You learn that people underestimate you. And sometimes that's the most powerful weapon you have. I never told my family. They never asked anyway. To them, I was still the struggling little sister who couldn't measure up to Ethan and his middle management job at an insurance company. The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. Tonight, I'd received an invitation to Ethan's engagement party. Last minute, of course. Probably my mother's guilt invitation so she could tell her friends the whole family was there. I almost didn't come, but something pulled me here. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some small, stubborn hope that things had changed. They hadn't. I stood in the entrance of my own hotel, wearing jeans and my favorite boots, my hair still smelling faintly of the countryside because I'd driven through Millbrook on the way here, just to remind myself where I came from. My outfit probably cost more than everything Sloane was wearing, but you wouldn't know it by looking. That's the thing about real money. It doesn't need to scream. I spotted my mother across the room, holding court with her friends, probably bragging about Ethan's wonderful fiancé and their wonderful future. Ethan stood next to Sloane, looking like a man who'd won the lottery. He had no idea he was holding a losing ticket. Sloane finally glanced my way, her smile sharp as a paper cut. She didn't recognize me as anything other than an inconvenience, a stain on her perfect evening. That was fine. Let her think I was nobody. Let them all think it. Because in about 3 hours, Sloane Whitmore was going to learn a very important lesson. Never underestimate the country girl, especially when she owns the ground you're standing on. The engagement party was exactly what you'd expect from someone like Sloane. Extravagant, over the top. Ice sculptures shaped like swans, a champagne fountain, enough flowers to make a botanical garden jealous. My hotel staff had done an amazing job, which made me proud, even though I wanted to roll my eyes at every design choice Sloane had made. I took my drink and found a quiet corner to observe. That's when my mother found me. Caroline Montgomery approached like a woman who'd smelled something unpleasant. She looked me up and down, her eyes stopping at my boots with visible disapproval. "It's nice that you could make it," she said, tone suggesting it was anything but. "Though I wish you could have worn something more appropriate. Sloane's family is very refined."
She stressed the word refined like it was a vocabulary word I should study. I came straight from work, I said, which was true. I just didn't mention that work meant running a multi-million-dollar hotel company. My mother sighed the way she always sighed at me, like I was a constant disappointment she'd learned to tolerate. At least try to make a good impression, she said, then disappeared back into the crowd. 20 seconds of conversation, and I already felt like I was 12 years old again. I spotted Sloane across the room, air-kissing her way through guests. Her parents, Franklin and Delilah Whitmore, stood nearby like proud peacocks. Franklin was large, red-faced, with the kind of confidence that comes from either genuine success or excellent acting. Delilah was thin, polished, dripping with jewelry. They looked wealthy, they acted wealthy, but something about them felt off, like a beautiful painting hung slightly crooked. Ethan finally noticed me and made his way over. "Glad you could come," he said, though his tone said he hadn't noticed whether I was there or not. "Have you met Sloane yet? She's amazing." "I've seen her," I said carefully. Ethan nodded, already looking past me. Some things never change. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. "Mom gave Sloane Grandma's necklace as an engagement gift. Wasn't that generous?" The air left my lungs. Grandma's necklace, the antique pendant our grandmother had promised to me specifically before she died. She'd held my hand and told me, "This is for you, Rachel, because you're my dreamer, my fighter, the one who'll make something of herself." My mother knew this. She'd been in the room when Grandma said it. And she gave it to Sloane anyway. I looked across the room and saw it. There it was, hanging around Sloane's neck like it belonged there. My grandmother's necklace, my inheritance, my memory. Sparkling under the chandelier lights, while Sloane laughed at something someone said. I excused myself and headed toward the restroom, needing a moment to breathe. That's when I passed Franklin Whitmore in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, face tight with stress. He didn't see me. He was too focused. "We need this wedding to happen," he said urgently. "The Montgomery family has money enough to cover our situation." He paused, listening. "Just get us through the ceremony. After that, everything will work out." He hung up and walked back toward the party, his salesman's smile sliding back into place like a mask. I stood frozen in that hallway. The Montgomery family had money? What money? My parents had a nice house, but I knew for a fact there was a second mortgage, because I'd been secretly paying it off for the past 3 years. Ethan had a decent job, nothing spectacular. There was no family fortune. So why did Franklin Whitmore think there was? And more importantly, what exactly was their situation? I pulled out my phone and called Marcus Reed, my general manager. "Marcus, I need deep background on the Whitmore family. Everything you can find. Business records, news articles, court filings. I need it in an hour." "Consider it done," he said without asking why. I went back to the party, watching the Whitmores like a hawk. Now that I knew something was wrong, I could see the cracks. Franklin kept checking his phone, jaw tightening with every message. Delilah touched her jewelry nervously, like she was afraid it might disappear. And Sloane, beautiful, perfect Sloane, had a hunger in her eyes that had nothing to do with love. I started piecing it together. For the past 3 years, I'd been sending money to my parents anonymously through my company. Every month, mortgage payment, utilities, medical bills. I never put my name on it. I didn't want their gratitude or questions. I just wanted to help from a distance. But my parents didn't know it was me. And apparently, my mother had decided it must be Ethan. Of course she did. In her mind, her golden child was secretly taking care of them, being the responsible, successful son she always knew he was. The money I sent, the sacrifices I made. Ethan got the credit. So the Whitmores did their research. They saw a nice house with no visible mortgage. They heard Caroline bragging about her son's investments. They saw a family that appeared to have hidden wealth. And they targeted Ethan like sharks smelling blood. But here's the problem. The money wasn't Ethan's. There was no family fortune. The Whitmores were chasing a mirage. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, you need to see this, now." I slipped out to the parking garage, needing privacy. Marcus had sent me a folder. I opened it in my car, overhead lights flickering. The documents painted an ugly picture. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore had been running a Ponzi scheme for years. Real estate developments that didn't exist. Investors paid with money from later investors. Classic con. But the house of cards was collapsing. Investors were asking questions. Auditors were circling. Federal investigators had opened a case. The Whitmores needed an exit strategy, fast. Enter my brother Ethan. Find a family that appeared wealthy. Marry N. Use the connection to shore up their crumbling reputation, or at minimum have somewhere to hide when everything fell apart. What they didn't realize, my family had nothing. The house was mortgaged. Ethan's salary was average. The only money flowing into the Montgomery household came from me, and I could stop it with a single phone call. I kept reading.
Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A court document from Arizona, 3 years ago. Same scheme, different names. The bride's real name wasn't Sloan Whitmore. It was Sandra Williams. And Franklin and Delilah? Not her real parents. They were partners in a long-running con. They'd been doing this for at least a decade. Different identities, different targets, same game. I sat in my car, the folder in my lap, and started laughing. I couldn't help it. These people had more identities than a spy movie. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Can we talk? Something about Sloan feels wrong." I checked the time. 5 minutes until 9 p.m., when Franklin was scheduled to make his big welcome to the family toast. Too little, too late, big brother. But at least he was starting to see through the mask. I got out of the car and walked back toward the hotel. Time to crash an engagement party. I walked back into the Monarch with a different energy. Marcus met me near the service entrance. "The AV system is ready. Just say when." I handed him a USB drive. "During Franklin's toast, put this on every screen in the ballroom. Every document, every photo, every piece of evidence." Marcus took the drive with a slight smile. "This is going to be interesting." At 8:59, Franklin stepped onto the small stage and took the microphone. The DJ lowered the music. Guests turned with champagne glasses raised. Franklin cleared his throat. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here to celebrate this beautiful union." He talked about family, legacy, how honored the Whitmores were to join the Montgomery family. Every word was a lie. Franklin raised his glass. "To the happy couple, to love, to family, to forever." I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus one word. "Now." The screens flickered. The happy photos of Ethan and Sloan disappeared, replaced by something else entirely. A court document, official, stamped with seals. "Fraud investigation, State of Arizona." And there, listed as a person of interest, Sandra Williams. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Franklin's smile froze. "There must be some mistake," he stammered. "This is a technical error." The screens kept changing. Financial records showing investor money funneled into shell companies. News articles about a real estate scheme in Phoenix that cost families their life savings. Then photos. A younger Sandra Williams, different hair, same cold eyes, standing next to Franklin and Delilah under completely different names. Sloan stood frozen, champagne glass trembling. For the first time all night, her mask had slipped completely. Ethan stared at the screens, then at Sloan, then back. I could see pieces clicking together in his mind. Franklin tried to push through the crowd toward the exit, but my security staff stepped into his path. That's when I stepped forward. I walked through the parting crowd toward the stage, my boots clicking on marble. Every eye turned to me. Marcus's voice came over the speakers, calm and professional. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the owner of the Monarch Hotel and CEO of Montgomery Hospitality. Please welcome Miss Rachel Montgomery." The silence was deafening. My mother's face went white. Ethan's jaw dropped. Even Sloan looked genuinely shocked. I took the microphone from Franklin's limp hand. "Good evening, everyone. I apologize for the interruption, but I thought you might want to know who you're really celebrating tonight." I gestured to the screens. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore are not who they claim to be. Their real estate empire is fraud. Their wealth is stolen. And their daughter Sloan is actually Sandra Williams, a con artist who's been running this scheme for over a decade. Sloan finally found her voice. "You're lying. You're a jealous, pathetic nobody." I smiled. "That's interesting. Did I also make up the federal investigation? The arrest warrants issued last month in Arizona? Did I fake the fact that Agent Carla Reeves and her team are currently waiting outside this hotel?" As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened. 4 people in suits walked in, badges visible, expressions all business. Sloan's face crumbled. Franklin tried to run, made it about 10 feet before Agent Reeves intercepted him. "Franklin Whitmore, or whatever your real name is, you're under arrest for wire fraud, investment fraud, and conspiracy." Delilah started crying, mascara running. "There's been a mistake, we can explain." Sloan turned to Ethan one last time, voice desperate. "Are you really going to let your sister do this to us? We love each other." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then he stepped away. "I don't even know who you are," he said quietly. Sloan's expression shifted from desperation to rage. She lunged toward me, screaming that I'd ruined everything, that I was supposed to be nobody, that I was just the broke farm girl. Security caught her before she reached me. I leaned close enough for only her to hear. "This broke farm girl owns the room you're standing in, pays the salary of everyone escorting you out, and will sleep very well tonight knowing exactly who she is." They led her away, still screaming, her designer dress wrinkled, her perfect hair destroyed. I turned back to the stunned crowd. "Well, the catering's already paid for. Seems a shame to waste good food. Bar stays open for anyone who wants to stick around." Nervous laughter. The DJ started playing something upbeat. The engagement party was over, but the night was just beginning. After the Whitmores were taken away, Ethan found me near the bar. He looked like a man who'd just woken from a nightmare. "How did you know?" His voice cracked. I listened, I watched, I paid attention.
All the things I've been doing my entire life while everyone else ignored me. He was quiet. Then, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't cover it. Doesn't cover years of treating you like you didn't matter. But I'm sorry. I studied my brother's face. For the first time ever, I saw genuine remorse. Sorry is a start, I said. My mother appeared then. Caroline looked smaller somehow, like the evening had physically shrunk her. She started to say something, but I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Bank records, transfer receipts, 3 years of payments to her mortgage company, utilities, medical bills. All from Montgomery Hospitality. All from me. You thought Ethan was supporting you, I said quietly. You bragged to everyone about your generous, successful son. I let that hang. It was me. It was always me. My mother stared at the phone, then at me, mouth opening and closing. I didn't do it for thanks, I continued. I did it because you're my family, even when you made me feel like I wasn't yours. But I thought you should know the truth about who was actually there for you. Caroline's eyes filled with real tears, not the performative kind. Real ones.
Bethany. She whispered my name like she was saying it for the first time. Before I could respond, there was movement near the dance floor. My grandmother's necklace, lying on the ground where Sloane had thrown it during her meltdown. Ethan walked over and picked it up carefully. He looked at it for a long moment, then walked back to me. This was always supposed to be yours. His voice was thick with emotion. I didn't know Mom gave it away. I'm sorry. He placed the necklace in my hand. The weight of it felt right, like something missing for years was finally back. My mother watched, tears streaming. I've been so wrong about everything. I didn't disagree, but I didn't pile on either. There would be time for difficult conversations later. Right now, I was just tired. 3 weeks later, I sat in my office at the Monarch Hotel, morning sun streaming through the windows. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. The Whitmores were finished. Federal prosecutors had enough for multiple fraud charges. Sandra Williams, the woman who called me a broke farm girl, was in custody awaiting trial. The story made local news. Hotel mogul exposes con artists at family party. One headline even called me the broke farm girl who owned the room. I had it framed. It hangs in my office where I can see it every morning. Ethan came to visit yesterday, the first time he'd seen my office, my staff, the life I'd built. He walked around touching things like he couldn't believe they were real. I spent years thinking I knew who you were, he said. I was wrong about everything. We both have a lot of years to make up for, I said. Maybe we should start now. We went to lunch, a real lunch. We actually talked about our childhood, our parents, all the things we never said. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was honest. That was more than we'd ever had before. My mother started therapy last week. She called to tell me, voice small and uncertain. I want to understand why I treated you that way, she said. I want to be better. I appreciate that, I told her. We can take things slow. Rebuilding trust takes time, but at least we were building something instead of watching it crumble. This morning, I was hosting a business breakfast. Investors, partners, expansion talks. A young woman walked in, looking nervous. Simple clothes, practical ponytail, eyes wide, clearly out of her element. One of my investors, Gerald, too much money and not enough manners, made a comment loud enough for everyone to hear. Who let her in? This is a private event. I stood up, walked over, extended my hand. Nicole, so glad you could make it. I turned to the table. Everyone, I want you to meet Nicole Patterson, this year's recipient of the Montgomery Hospitality Scholarship. She grew up in a small town in Montana, worked 2 jobs to put herself through community college, and she's about to start at Cornell's hotel management program. The room went quiet. Gerald suddenly found his coffee fascinating. I led Nicole to a seat at my table, the same table as the investors. She whispered, "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I said. "The real work is just starting. But if you ever feel like you don't belong somewhere, remember, the people who build the most beautiful things usually started with nothing but stubbornness and dreams." She smiled at that. After breakfast, I stood in the lobby of my hotel, watching guests come and go. Business people, tourists, families, all of them walking on floors I owned, completely unaware of the woman who made it possible. And that was fine. I didn't need them to know. People will always try to make you feel small for where you came from. Let them. While they're busy looking down on you, they won't see you rising up. I learned that lesson back in a small town where I was never good enough. I carried it through years of struggle and doubt, and people telling me I'd never amount to anything. And now here I was, standing in my hotel, surrounded by everything I built.
the broke farm girl. She smelled success coming from a mile away.